Welcome to the Geek Homeworld podcast. I'm your host, Ed, aka the Savage Tech Man. We talk film, TV, and tech, all from a geek perspective. You can find us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and you can subscribe and follow on YouTube at Geek Homeworld. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Be a part of the Geek Homeworld. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode, Livestream. Sorry. Getting on here. This is a Geek Homeworld podcast. Had a little problems. It's like when you plan to go live, everything just gets a bug in the machine or whatever you call it. So anyway, welcome everyone who's here. New people and previous people. So let's see. I'm getting myself together here. This is Geek Homeworld episode 176, our live stream. And we are at the season 1 finale. And we're going to be talking the entire season here of X-Men 97. I tell you what, just overall, and this is no secret to anybody who has had to tolerate me talking about you must watch X-Men 97. You know, I've seen so many franchises, superhero and otherwise, and big studios fumble the last couple years. You know, just origin stories. You know, we can go back to Luke Skywalker. We can go back to, a lot of it's Disney because Disney owns everything, but it's not exclusively Disney. We saw DC implode and fall flat on its face with a lot of its films, and nobody can seem to get things right because they mess with the story. They want to go a little too woke, or they want to do a different direction that is inherently against what the characters are. And for me, I've always come back to, since the 90s, X-Men the animated series. And they, for me, even when the Fox movies came out, I always held them in high regard because in my mind, when I heard Rogue, it was the voice actor that did Rogue. It was that version of Rogue. Nothing against Anna Paquin's Rogue, but it wasn't Rogue. You know, Gambit, I hear Gambit's voice, Magneto, Professor X, you know, Cyclops, my favorite character. Cyclops was done the way he was meant and written to be. The leader, the tactician that he is, that's how he was done in X-Men 97, and he was done that way in X-Men the animated series. Every iteration of him, Scott was a big pushover. He was killed off by Jean, which is not something Jean would ever do, no matter what entity she might be possessed by at the present time. So, you know, there's things like that. It's just those little things, which are actually big things. But for me, for a true fan, you have to know how to write the characters. You don't take a character like Luke Skywalker that's existed for 40 plus years and turn him into what he was in The Last Jedi. Mark Hamill was the first to tell you, nope, that's Jake Skywalker. But, you know, we're not going to go down that path. We've been down that path. That's a dead horse that, you know, we've dealt with so many times. We just got to look forward, and you got to look real hard, especially when you're a fan of this genre that's played out at this point. Every trope has been done. You know, we're seeing probably the end of the superhero genre. This is maybe going the way, well, after Logan, Deadpool and Wolverine, excuse me. That's going to be $1 billion one. That's just a no-brainer. They got to do a lot to screw that up, and I don't think they will. And I think Disney's learned their lesson. I'm going to be the first one there to watch all the projects, even though they just announced Hawkeye's getting a second season. I'm not super excited about that, but will I watch? Yeah, I'll watch. I watched the Kate Bishop show, season 2. But, so when you write a character, it's about the story. It all comes back to the story, and this is what's plagued everything. It's not just the wokeness, which people are rebelling against. It's just, when you write a character, you have to be true to that character's origins, to the trajectory that character would be heading. And not beheading, but that they would be heading in that direction. Not beheading. Beheading's different. You know what I'm saying? So the thing about it is you have to know, in being a good writer, you have to be true to the source material. To me, the source material, the best way it's ever been displayed was X-Men the Animated Series, even down to their costumes or whatever. It was great seeing the throwback to the early iterations of that, where they had to go, and it worked into the story with X-Men 97. They did a wonderful job. And first off, I don't know, and I've said this on the podcast before, several episodes, it's on every single one, I pretty much said it, and I said it on X or Twitter or whatever they're calling it today. Bo DeMaio, I don't know what he allegedly did, if he created a toxic workplace, or, they just don't like a man of a questionable lifestyle, questionable to some. Maybe it's his OnlyFans account. Well, we may never know, and I don't know if I want to know, because all I care about really is I'm not here for his personal life or anybody who's writing this stuff. I'm here for what ends up on the page, for what is written, and as long as it's true to the characters. And I want to tell you, just look at episode 5, which they've put up for a nomination for consideration, and I really hope it wins some awards for that on X-Men 97. Remember It, Gambit episode. But it's not the personal lives of the people that create the music. Prince was an eccentric millionaire. He was, out there, but I don't know anything. I know what we know about his life, but you don't really know a person. And I don't care what he did. I've always been a Michael Jackson fan because I like Michael Jackson's commitment to his craft, to his art, his dancing, his performing. There's so many people that still mimic him. The whole K-pop scene, their dance moves based upon Michael Jackson, if you want to be real about it. I could go on and on. There's many artists, out there. I can separate the personal lives from the art they create, and it is hard. It is difficult to listen to R. Kelly music, though. Some of it gets to extremes, and he was actually convicted. Michael Jackson technically was not, and I'm not talking about technicalities, and I'm not going to devolve in all to that. But I'm saying all this in regards to whatever Bo DeMaio supposedly did, or whoever he pissed off. You need to look at your ratings at the highest rated Disney Plus show X-Men 97 is right now. In Rotten Tomatoes, it's been bought and sold by many influencers, I'm sure, and those inside and outside the industry. And but as a metric, it's the one they're using. So we're in the high 90s on that, fan and critics. And that's rare these days. And and I'm not a shill for anybody. I don't care. No one's sponsoring me. Nobody's listening. So whatever. But it's not about that. It's about creating art. It's about creating the craft and what you do. And as a writer myself, I understand the importance of writing the story and getting the story correct. And knowing your characters, knowing what motivates them. Okay, we're all a little terrified. Well, not all of us, but those in the woke camp we're waiting for, because Disney's burned us so bad with all the wokeness and shoving all this stuff down our throat, as storyline, when they're just really subverting everything in so many series, and, that we're like, oh, what about Morph and this and that? Well, we had probably the wokest moment for Morph. There were really only 2 woke moments for Morph. But I've always said, if there was a place where, or within this genre, if there was one particular IP where a story like Morph could be explored, it would naturally be in X-Men. Whether it was intended as an allegory or whatever you want to call it for gay rights or religious this and that, because like you have Nightcrawler, who's a Roman Catholic, and he doesn't flaunt his religion in people's faces, but it is part of who his character is. So if you wrote him to be something totally different than that, that would be wrong. If Morph and Wolverine suddenly had a relationship together, that might work for Morph because it's in his name, Morph. He morphs. He can be female characters, he can be a male character, and he's done that. And nobody has an issue with that. It's the sexuality part of it, and is now Wolverine going to be? That was the, what was out there. Is that what's going to happen? Is that this special relationship? It scared everybody to death. So far we haven't seen any of that. We've only seen 2 instances of Morph. So if you were looking at X-Men 97, you're looking to find a way to beat it down and destroy it. If you're that malicious and you can't enjoy your entertainment without tearing it apart, then there are 2 instances you could point to in season 1 of X-Men 97, but they really aren't that important. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. They're really not something that messed with the story. And even if we get a whole episode about Morph and, being non-binary, okay, that was something that was never established originally with his character in the comics whatsoever. When his characters are created, he was created, and it was never established or mentioned because that wasn't a thing in the 90s when the animated series came out. And I hold the writers of the animated series in high regard, minus that last season. And they had their issues with that, but it still is good. It's like I used to say about Star Wars. Even bad Star Wars is still good Star Wars. It's like cold pizza. It's still good, But anyway, so you've got subverting a character there, maybe changing Morph. But if there's ever a team or superhero within the superhero genre, X-Men's where you explore something like that. So if they go that way, I'm not going to be against it. I'm not going to stop watching this show because I know I'm going to miss out on some very good, not just action that you come for in an animated show and in the animation. I'm enjoying the animation. But you come here for the storyline. And if I was Kevin Feige, I know he's never going to see this. No one's ever going to put this out there on the internet where it's ever going to be heard by anybody who makes any kind of important decisions. But if I were in charge of Marvel and I looked at the numbers and saw how bad my stock's been doing and how bad things have floundered under my watch, I would immediately say, okay, Bo DeMaio, man, we made a mistake. We need to hire you back. We need you back. I want you to write or co-write whatever the X-Men adaptation for live action. And I tell you, if it's anything as good as this series, then you've got a massive hit on your hands and you've got the right way to start off in the MCU with X-Men. Because if Marvel screws up the X-Men right out the bat, you've already lost a lot of people, your core audience. You've lost casual viewers as well. That's why you're not hitting $1 billion on anything. But you're going to have to rebuild, and part of your rebuilding process is making sure that X-Men is done right. If it takes a few more years, let it be a few more years. We knew it was going to be at least 5 years, and of course the pandemic's thrown a monkey wrench in everything. And Hollywood is bleeding, hemorrhaging. I know people in the industry losing houses and everything else because a lot of the productions have gone away. And I know that's because of the strikes and the greediness of the powers that be. Everybody wants their cut and they're not going to... I've worked in retail. I know how it goes. It's all about the bottom line. You got to have better, returns on your investments. So... that's what you've got to do. It's about the bottom line. But you know what? You still have the people you're servicing, your customers. And your customers are the fans. The ones that will sink you or help you to swim. And X-Men 97 is... I could not ask more of this series. You've exceeded my expectations. Season 1, fantastic. It's been so long and it's felt so refreshing, but it's been so long since we've had anything in the fandom to be excited about. And not just once, but more than once. Your weakest episode was the Jubilee episode. I get it. They wanted to throw a little breather in there before we hit episode 5. But I'm glad they did that. And I still like it. It's still good. And yes, this X-Men is more adult. It's more brutal than the animated series ever was. But there were such great storylines that the animated series adapted better than the films before the films came out. And they've done an excellent job on carrying that torch and just upping it, the level of it, of greatness for X-Men 97. It's just incredible what they've achieved, what they've been able to do with X-Men 97. So it's a lot of talking, but I kind of wanted to just expound on some of that. And so let's kind of get into this fantastic episode. And I want to apologize for my energy isn't there. Feeling a little bit under the weather, but just my energy level isn't where it needs to be. So don't take that as me not excited, because as YouTube, the algorithm probably loves it when you're animated and you're all that. But I'm just going to be real with you. So we have Tolerance is Extinction, episode 10, which is part 3. And this is the official synopsis. This is from Wikipedia's article on X-Men 97. And I'll read it real quick and then we'll break it down and talk about the episode now. Oh, and by the way, if you're here, thank you for being here. I just want to get this out of the way. Please subscribe to Geek Homeworld at youtube.com/@geekhomeworld4248. That is youtube.com/@geekhomeworld4248. And if you're watching the video on the replay or whatever, please like, share, subscribe, ding that bell, do all that stuff that makes us happy here. It helps creators like myself. And thank you for being here and being a part of this. And so let's read the synopsis for part 3, Tolerance is Extinction, or episode 10. With Wolverine critically injured, Xavier takes control of Magneto and restores power to Earth, fracturing Magneto's mind. Jean, connecting to the cosmic power of the Phoenix, places the collar on Bastion, restoring the Prime Sentinel's humanity, and reverses Sinister's mutant augmentations with which frees Cable. The X-Men fight to prevent Bastion from crashing Asteroid M into Earth and causing a new extinction event. But it still plummets after the U.S. government launches missiles at the asteroid hoping to destroy it. The Xavier Protocols. With Xavier's help, Magneto regains consciousness and sends the asteroid into space. It explodes and most of the X-Men are presumed dead. 6 months later, Bishop arrives and tells Forge that the X-Men are trapped in time. Cyclops and Jean are in 3960 AD, a desolate future where they encounter Mother Askani, who is actually their future daughter, Rachel Summers. But they don't know that yet. Nobody knows that yet. And a young Nathan, which is their son, Cable. But he's not a baby. He's a little bit older at this point. And Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Professor Xavier, and Magneto are transported to ancient Egypt in 3000 BC, where they meet in the Sabanor, a young version of Apocalypse. In a mid-credit scene, our first one of the season, Apocalypse finds one of Gambit's playing cards in present-day Genosha. So the big lead up and everything that we were thinking, because in part 2 or episode 9, it was basically the Fatal Attraction storyline. And when they start off here, Wolverine the adamantium has been ripped from his body. He's hanging on for dear life during all of this. And we thought, we do see Xavier go into the mindscape, astral plane or whatever. He's at Magneto's mind, and he fractures his mind, and by taking over his powers and restoring, reversing the electromagnetic pulse to Earth and healing Earth's magnetic field that was less than 24 hours or less than an hour towards the end of the episode from like the planet being totally irradiated by solar radiation and stuff like that. So because the magnetic field protects Earth, and it had broken down because of Magneto with his EMP that he did. And so when Xavier did that, he fractured Magneto's mind, and in doing that, he had to go back in there and kind of restore it. This is going to be where some of that badness or evil or whatever you want to call it in Magneto comes over into Xavier's mind, creating Onslaught down the road. So I think Onslaught we're probably going to get by season 3. And who knows? But we'll get Apocalypse. And Apocalypse, it seems like, from what I'm understanding, because Apocalypse is also in present day Genosha after the Genosian massacre and of all the mutants, and he picks up the Queen of Hearts card, which is kind of charred, and it's where Gambit fell. So everybody believes that he's going to make Gambit war. Or his angel, actually probably his angel of death, one of his 4 horsemen. So he's going to have that. And in the future we have, I think they didn't show, but I believe Bo DeMaio said that I'm trying to think, is it Storm, Wolverine, and somebody else? I can't think right now. My mind's gone blank. But they're the ones that weren't mentioned. They're actually, we think they're in the future with Scott and Jean in 3960 AD. And what's going to happen is, I think Storm's going to end up being somehow being Apocalypse's, one of his horsemen. Jean, Wolverine's going to be War, like in the comics. Gambit's going to be Death, like taking Archangel's place. So that's what we're thinking right now. So we'll see. And it's just going to be very interesting. But there's a possibility that the X-Men may be able to influence in Sabanur, the Chosen One, or Apocalypse as we know him later on. They may be able to fight alongside each other, even into present day. And, we may go through the Age of Apocalypse, this whole season 2 coming up. Or he may end up fighting alongside the X-Men because of the rise of Onslaught, So we may go through Age of Apocalypse, then things may get fixed, I think. Then I think towards the end of season 2 or season 3, they're going to, bring in Onslaught. We'll see some seeds drop there that, Xavier's not quite right in his head or whatever. And then we'll follow that storyline, and then, we'll get Onslaught. So I was super excited. I was a little let down because I had my hopes up to seeing Onslaught, which I never thought we'd get close to seeing Onslaught. And a lot of people were just following the lineage of that. And part of me, sometime during the season, thought, well, maybe we could see Apocalypse, And so I'm excited about that. I'm not against seeing Apocalypse because he's the greatest villain, and it's always good when you have Apocalypse around. So it's a lot of fun. So that being said, we'll get a good. I think we'll get a great season 2. And it sounds like it's going to be before the end of 2025. So before the end of next year, we'll get season 2. And because they're literally wrapping up season 2. the voice actress that did Rogue said they called her back for some voiceover work, and said, but she wrapped on season 2. So, it's good to know that they've got that done. And we already knew season 2 was pretty much done. And now I guarantee it's a high priority. And I'm glad that no matter what's happened with Bo DeMeyer, that he is getting to see the love on Twitter and X and places like that for him, for whatever he did allegedly or whatever that didn't jive with Marvel's plan for things, or Disney or whatever. It's good to see that his expert writing that he did is being rewarded. And I hope, if that episode wins for Remember It, I hope he gets to be there and to accept it, part of the reward, because he's a big part of it. In fact, he wrote that episode himself. So, But anyway, it's just very, very interesting to see. I'm just so glad to be alive in such a time where we're seeing such a great representation of our superheroes out there, and being done correctly, the way it should be, and being true to the characters. So basically, in part 3, episode 10 of Tolerance is Extinction, the government uses not the Xavier protocols. There were Xavier protocols, but the Magneto protocols are how they can take down. There are protocols that Charles developed so that the government could take down Magneto if he went rogue. No pun intended. And, so they did do that, and essentially it sounded like it was some kind of gravity weapon or something. Now, here's an interesting thought. When the X-Men, so Asteroid M explodes, but you don't really see, you do maybe see an explosion. It probably looked like that from Earth, but what we kind of see is that they were actually teleported, and like I said in the description of the episode, we saw that they were teleported. They were split up and teleported to different timelines, or different complete ends of the time stream. So there's a possibility that there's a lot of possibilities, but some of the theories is when they went back to, when we see Beast, Magneto, Xavier, Nightcrawler, and Rogue, when we see them in ancient Egypt in 3000 BC, when they run into En-Sabah-Nur, we end up seeing, like, they're looking like over a sand dune or whatever, and we see like this dome kind of thing that could be a ship, and we're thinking, or at least the videos that I've seen are thinking, that could be Kang's ship from the future, and he would have been Rama-Tut, the version or variant of Kang. So this could tie into the MCU depending how they want to, if this is a different universe, which I think they said it is, but it's still within the MCU continuity. So with that being said, if that's true, Apocalypse gets that technology, which in the comics he got it from the Celestials and the ship that he had, and they even kind of covered that in the animated series. But they could tweak it a little bit here in the series, and so what might happen is Apocalypse, he gets that, and that's how he's able with his mutations to, have this celestial type technology, but it could be technology from the far future that Kang brought through time. And so maybe Kang slips out of there, and maybe he even came back later or whatever and pulled a certain X-Men, some to 3960 AD, with Mother Askany, and Rachel Summers, essentially, to fight in the age of Apocalypse against Apocalypse, or in the aftermath of Apocalypse in the future, after the age of Apocalypse, something like that. Or, so maybe Kang's the one behind all of this, shifting people through time. I mean, he's the most likely candidate to be doing something like that, even though I don't think we've actually had Kang on the animated series or X-Men 97. But, it's not within the realm of possibility that Kang could be involved. And, with Jonathan Majors and all that, and we'll probably lose our version of Kang in live action. We still don't need to lose the character of Kang, because he's far too important within the whole timeline of the X-Men. I mean, and there's a lot you can do with that character that, would be, really good storytelling that should be addressed, should be part of the storytelling going on here. So we have the two teams split up, one in 3960 AD, and we have back in ancient Egypt the rest of the team there. And I don't know where they're. I just kind of gave you ideas of what they might do with Apocalypse, but I think eventually in the present day he shows up in Genosha. So without Xavier and the X-Men in the present day, there's only the Avengers, and it's not an Avengers show, even though we had all those great cameos of not just Avengers but other superheroes. And so it's interesting to see where they're going to go with the whole thing. So a lot of it's just speculation at this point, and as we get closer to it next year, I guess we'll get more leading up to it. And I do think Disney Plus is putting out I forgot what it's called. It's not called Unmasked, but it's something like that. It's something Disassembled or something like that they did for the Avengers. They're kind of doing something similar to that with X-Men 97. I think it's coming out in the next couple days or so, or this week or so, before the end of May. So I got to check that out. Yeah, let us know what you think about that if you check that as well on Disney Plus. But anyway, so you have that going on, and so we've got the teams split up. We're in the past and we're in the future, and we've got Apocalypse. So I'm so excited for the possibilities of what they can do. I don't know if I have the comic. I'm looking here. I don't think I do. I think I have one of them, but I don't have the whole run of it. But the comic they did on the Apocalypse basically, sets up what we're seeing here. And X-Men 97 has so brilliantly, all the writers, fantastic. Couldn't ask for better. You've set the bar so incredibly high with season 1, especially episode 5. And to me, episode 5 and probably episode 9 were my favorites. 10, very close, But other than that Jubilee episode, which was meant to be a little bit lighthearted, split with the Storm episode, with her losing her powers and then getting them back later. Life, Death, Part 1. It was top notch. It was top notch the whole way. And I've, I got a friend of mine and who works for said company, and I've been on him about, you've got to watch this. And he's like, I'm just going to wait to watch them all because he had other things to watch. And I understand that. But I'm like, dude, you are so missing out. I'm like, what is happening in this cartoon is better than some films I've seen in live action. That's how good the writing is. That's how good the writing is. That's why Bo DiMaio and his team need to be in charge of bringing X-Men to life on the big screen. And I'll keep saying that. Bring Bo DiMaio back. I think it's a hashtag. They need to. Kevin, you're never going to see this, but if you watch it, if you happen to watch this, just look around, dude. Look at the numbers. This series, yes, I know the streaming numbers came out. Not a lot of people are watching this comparatively, but it is, I think, one of the highest rated Disney Plus shows ever. A lot of the episodes are way in the 90s and have been sitting in the 90s, upper 90s at that. And is damn near perfect. And if you don't see what's going on and listen to the fans, if you want to get that billion-dollar franchises back, you want that box office, all the shareholders, if you want that, you'll demand good writing like this that follows. I'm not saying you have to carbon copy the comics. No, we want you to put a spin on things, but we want you to be realistic to the characters and their story arcs. And, fans like me will reward that. We'll go to see a movie. I've seen, if I like a movie, the most I ever saw a movie was 8 times. Yeah, that's a little extreme, I know, but if I love a movie, I love the movies, and I will watch it. And animated, I can't tell you how many times since the 90s I've watched X-Men the animated series. And I can't tell you how many times I've watched all of these episodes of X-Men 97. In fact, I'd stay up late at night just so I could catch it at 3 a.m. And there wasn't many times I was able to do that. Maybe once I think I was able to do that, but then I was too tired. It's like, I got school tomorrow. But, so I've just been raving about this show, X-Men 97, and I can't say enough about how great it is. And I know people are sick and tired of hearing it, but I'm going to keep saying it. That's the thing when you're a true fan. I'm not with all the wokeness on stuff. I'm not. I'm with good storytelling. So I'm not afraid to call it out when something is bad or it's wrong, or like the way they did Luke Skywalker, blah, blah, blah. That's a broken record there. But I'm not afraid to give flowers, as they say. That's what people say now, to those who deserve the adulation for a job well done. And the writers, you deserve all the awards you could possibly get. And raises. Yeah, why don't you give them all raises? So, because people appreciate a raise better than a pizza party. Trust me, I know. But I'm not just toting the line so I can get views and all that. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you, if something's good, I'm going to say it's good. If it's bad, I'm going to say it's bad. And I look really hard at things that are bad. I'm a defender of X-Men The Last Stand. A lot of people I know, one of my best friends, he never wants to mention that film. Of course, he hates Last Jedi more. I can see things in Last Jedi that are good. The cinematography, great. Storyline ruined everything. X-Men The Last Stand, at the time when that was done, having it like a split personality kind of thing, within that, I know it wasn't the true way to represent the whole Phoenix storyline with Jean Grey, but you know what? It worked. And the time it worked. Killing Scott, I was against that. Because we've all, like I said earlier, like I've always said, I've always been, from the animated series, I was a Cyclops fan. I know Wolverine had been big in the 80s, but he was, after the animated series, that really became big. And then Hugh Jackman in the 2000s with the X-Men films. And Hugh Jackman owns that role. I agree. And I like Wolverine as a character. I really do. But Cyclops is always my favorite. And the way he was portrayed in the animated series was the way I've always anticipated him as being the leader. From the comics that I read, Scott was always... He was like the good one. He was the general, the tactician, and we got to see him use his powers in ways that I've never seen him use his powers, that are so over the top but so awesome. And X-Men 97 is a love letter to the fans, but it really is to Cyclops fans. It's like, here, this is what you've been missing since the animated series and since the comics. And so it's writing characters the way they're supposed to be. And so this redemption of Cyclops' character, thank you so much. Thank you, writers, for that. That made me happy right off the bat. And but that's not all. It's like they keep giving us so many great things. And on this show, it's just amazing. And I just, we've become accustomed with Disney and all that to just know the other shoe's going to drop. For every X-Men 97, there's a She-Hulk, or there's a I don't know, whatever. Some people didn't like, I almost call it Moon Knight. I thought Oscar Isaac, who ironically played, I thought a good version. I didn't like the power set on it, but Apocalypse in the live action X-Men films, the Fox films. But Oscar Isaac playing like three characters in there, three totally different characters in Moon Knight, I thought was exceptional. I thought that year he should have gotten some kind of acting award for that. But, I can defend, I'm a Terminator fan. I love the Terminator franchise. Even the bad ones, even the ones that don't make sense, that mess up the time continuity. God knows Fox did enough messing up with the continuity, but we were still getting X-Men films, and I was happy. But the next Terminator film, I don't care what it is, I'm going to go see it, and I'm probably going to enjoy it on some level, And that's another podcast episode or so for another time, just talking about different franchises like Terminator. I could talk all day and night about Terminator. And Terminator can be great without Arnold. I prefer him in it. But, at this point after Dark Fate, which I thought was pretty good, and it was well received, but it bombed, And it was before, it was when films were starting to bomb. And then we had the pandemic, and oh, well, you know how that's been. So that's that. But talking, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but there's a guy on YouTube. He's a musician, and his name is Rick Beato, Beato, and I think that's the name of his channel, Rick Beato. And he had an interview with a guy, and I did not catch who the guy's name was, and I had it kind of on in the background. I was working on some other stuff today, and I watched the video, and I was listening, and then I kept pulling me away from what I was doing on my computer as I was watching it on YouTube on the television. And he was talking about music, but he also touched on it's that same way in film, and it's with other genres of entertainment, how tastes are changing, and how things do that, and like how we consume music has changed, how we consume films, and we've learned that over the last year. Even with great films such as Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I highly recommend. I've got some other ones. I was going to go off on another tangent, but I'm trying not to. I'm trying to stay focused here. But when we get to seeing these other, elements of music and how it's changing and how we consume music, how it's, It's very interesting. You can see the taste. You can see that with film. You can see how this generation coming up, I guess Gen Z, they're not embracing the film industry like every generation before has. I think we're going through some kind of 50 or 80-year cycle. I don't know what the timeline on it is. But I feel like, when you look at, other than, having like a Spider-Man, Far From Home, $1 billion film, or Deadpool and Wolverine, which will be $1 billion film. Even what's considered good box office these days is still depressed. There are people, like I said, I still follow a lot of the groups when I was in the film industry actively, and there are people out there really hurting, people losing their houses, they've lost their livelihood. People haven't worked since 2023, over a year. And it's been slim pickings in the city I came from that is one of the big hubs for Hollywood. And even in this area, it's this area isn't as big for films as Savannah was, but you're seeing the effects of it all, but you're seeing a whole industry change. You're seeing a generational shift in how media is consumed. I don't want to, and we said this on the podcast, me and my friends throughout the pandemic, and, back to the glory days of 2019 when everything was, what Disney had, $7 billion films, I think, in the year-end charts there. It's amazing. And look at them now. They kill for $500 million. But they'll get it back. They'll get it back if it's not too late. But the thing is, how people consume media and losing that film experience, that theater experience, is not something I will be happy at all about, because the film industry is so important, not just that it employs people and inside and outside the industry. It's not just that. It's that I'm very comfortable living in a theater. I love the theater experience. Now, another little tangent. I did see If. I thought it was cute, but here's a spoiler review. It just was underwhelming. And I had that fear, but I'm like, thank God Ryan Reynolds will have, and it may do okay, but Ryan Reynolds will have Deadpool versus Wolverine as $1 billion thing under his belt. And if that ends the Deadpool series, so be it, but I hope it doesn't. But anyway, so yeah, I don't want to see the experience of being in a theater, especially being like opening night. I miss that when you've got such a rabid fan base that's there. And Marvel was great about these event movies, but they got cocky, like a lot of people do. It's nothing new. You beat a dead horse. It's the music industry's done it for decades. You find that trend and you beat it to death. And every movie copies you, every song copies you. It's, no matter which industry it is, it's just that gluttonous greed to try to get more and more money, and just now it's to prop up the, bottom line. It's always been about that, but now it's just more blatant. And on that Rick Beato interview with this gentleman, and I wish I could remember his name, but it's one of his newest videos as a recording of this May 18th, 2024. And the thing is, it's that how do I put this? With the way that things are going, they're not conducive to, like, this is what I was getting. Okay, sorry. Just getting my brain working here. What they were saying in the interview was essentially that how people are consuming things is changing, and you definitely have to change with it. But they talked about the Western. Everybody for decades, it was all about the Westerns, and then eventually, I think Rick said, eventually, people like Eastwood, he got out of that and he got into, I guess, Dirty Harry or some of the films back in the 70s or whatever. But for a long time, it was, that was the thing. And they beat Westerns to death. They were on TV, they were on film, and that was the thing. And you just thought it was going to be Westerns. And they mentioned musicals. Musicals had their heyday. Now they've made a bit of a comeback and so have a few Westerns here and there throughout my lifetime. But as the predominant head of the genre, like superhero movies are, or have been through 2019, it's not so much there. We saw a Monday movie at Regal, one of the surprise movie, and it was called Babes, Babes, and I forgot the actors who were in it. And it's a very raunchy film, but it's so hilarious. I found myself laughing out loud. It's been so long since I watched anything on TV or in the theater where I just found myself laughing out loud. And I can't even remember like much of it, what I was laughing at specifically. I just remember it was just really well written, and it just comes back to the writing, like with X-Men 97, how well it's written. It just comes back to that. It's all about your story. It doesn't care what effects you have. And, since Marvel, the MCU arose in 2008, which I've not been at odds with, I'm like super happy. I'll watch a Marvel film any day, essentially, but some more than others. But since then, comedies aren't predominant like they used to be. Like when I grew up, comedies were everywhere, and they were R-rated comedies. And, growing up, we didn't even realize they were R-rated. I mean, that didn't mean as much, I guess. But still, you had good, well-written comedies. And with the rise of superhero films, everybody was doing a superhero film. Marvel, DC, whoever, And that's fine and dandy. And the marketplace is big enough where you can have comedies. You've had a few that have made it through and done well, but they're few and far between. But I feel like we're entering a new phase if superheroes are, if the genre is officially dead as like the top part of the genre of films, if it's the top genre no more, then I could see some of these smaller films and these comedies. I've seen a lot of smaller budget films that are really good, and some of them, the box. They're not going to do great box office. Certain comedies aren't going to make $1 billion. They're not going to. You're going to have event films, and that's what I think we're going to end up. I think that's what we're moving to. You'll get a Spider-Man film, or you'll get a Deadpool versus Wolverine that'll be $1 billion. Then you'll get a smaller film like If makes money. You'll get something like Babes, which is hilarious, and I think it's out this weekend. You should definitely go check it out. It's a good laugh, but it also has a heartwarming part of the story. There's a twist in it, and it's like, it kind of gets you in the feels, and that's good. You got to grab people. I've always said, when you're writing, you have to grab them in their heart and just kind of pull their heart out. Just you get them right there in the heart, and that's where you get it. And so the rise of, I think, smaller films, I think, are coming back, and I think that's how the landscape is changing in the film landscape. I think I would love there to be a lot of diversity. I'd like to go see a comedy one day, the next day go see big budget superhero, over the top kind of film with heart, and all that, and see something totally different. I'd see a musical, but I'm not really into musicals. But I guess it'd have to really be good, or something that's interesting enough, well written or whatever. But I think, like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I saw last week, I enjoyed it. I don't know if it was the best in the franchise, but I'm glad. I wanted it to succeed, and I'm glad that it has succeeded. And I hope it's a big enough success, because box office, just like in the music industry, just because you're selling all the streams and all the way that stuff is like calculated now, it's really not a true metric. It's a different kind of metric than the way things were measured before. That's why you can break records and all this, like in the music industry. That's a whole nother thing. But in the film industry, it's like if it's well written, if it's well received, you have to meet a certain benchmark for it to be a success. But we may never get back to the days, or it may be a long time before we do get back to the days where, I can remember when 200 million was, if you made 100 million, that was a success. And 200 million, now it's like $500 million. Okay, it didn't make $1 billion, or if you make one film that's $1 billion in the MCU, everything has to be $1 billion, and if it's not, it's a failure. If you want to talk about Captain Marvel, yeah, the first one did $1 billion, but it was sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. So yeah, that was like the most rabid time for fans, in the MCU. And then you come back with the Marvels, which is super woke, and so much hatred for Brie Larson and blah 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 and all that, and a lot of negativity from the fans. Some of it well deserved, some of it just, it's part of their brand. So to hate on something is just, part of their brand. That's not part of my brand, to hate on things just because it's the thing to do. I want to look at the merit, good or bad, and because I like an underdog as well. I love, it's not about building stuff up to tear it down always. It shouldn't be that. It should be on the merit of each project. But anyway, the Marvels was trash compared to the first Captain Marvel. And that first Captain Marvel wasn't that great of a film, but I found myself watching it and enjoying it. In hindsight, it doesn't hold up as well as it did at the time. I had mixed reactions about it, but I was in that rabid phase. I was with everybody else feeling that, the end game, the Infinity War and Endgame, and gosh, what's next? Iron Man 3 got that kind of boost, being a $400 and something million sequel. I hated how they did the Mandarin in that, and I'm still not sure I'm terribly happy with it, but over time, Iron Man 3 has grown on me. I like it more than I did. And I almost look at it as a Christmas film, because there's a lot of, it takes place around Christmas. So, it's got those moments in there. It's got some of that, but the what I want to say here. But films can do that. Films can go in and out, and they can be. You can have one film that is artificially inflated, or it seems like it. And the films that just don't live up, they don't trend well. There's things from the 80s that make me cringe. There's things I've created content that make me cringe. Like, what was I thinking? And but it's just where you were then. It's about growth, and growth as an artist and a creator, and. No pun intended, but The Creator, there's another film that didn't do well at the box office. I thought was a very good film. I can name a lot of those that didn't do very well box office, but were good films. And that's one of them, And, of course, I'm in the discussion of AI and future tech, and it's always been something I've been into. So, I don't have a problem with any of that. So, I find it intriguing. And what they've so brilliantly done with X-Men 97 is really made it where they've just written powerful stories. And I'm telling you, some of the drama, it's more like a soap opera, X-Men. It really kind of was when you think of the animated series. It was more than just a kid's cartoon. And this X-Men 97 goes so much more hardcore than the original did. And it works. It really works on so many levels, and the characters are complex, and we do get enough of each of the different characters in X-Men 97 so that we're seeing a breakdown of these stories. And I mean, I've got so much love for the animated series and the creators behind that. I was on Twitter this week, and I'm giving them a shout out and said, y'all laid the groundwork for the great work that Bo DeMaio and his group did, and everybody that worked on X-Men 97 has done. And I can't be any happier as a superhero fan, as a Marvel fan, as an X-Men fan. This is the best time in the world to be alive, because it's just so awesome. And please don't make us wait another year. I don't think I can wait another year for season 2, but if it means, well, season 2 is pretty much in the can, but in season 3 we'll have a new head writer, we were told. So Bo's apparently not coming back, which is disappointing. I just hope they can keep the level up, the standard that Bo has set, and the rest of his team have set, and into the live action. You need to be looking at what they've achieved with season 1 of X-Men 97. Marvel, you need to be looking at that. So that's what has to be looked at, and so to maintain that level of excellence with just 10 episodes, and oh my God, the pace of X-Men 97, you burn through storylines. Like, what's going to be left? Maybe it'll inspire the current writers of the X-Men comics and other comics to really step up their game, and the comic book industry is almost non-existent at this point. It's just not something that this generations have gravitated towards the way my generation did and generations before. And part of it's the wokeness, it's the terrible writing. And, this all comes back to stories. Let's be true to the characters. Let's expand the characters. Let's take them in new directions. But let's not take them so far off base that they make no sense, that, it's just a character and a name. It's like Hollywood getting a franchise. The Fall Guy's a perfect example. I enjoyed The Fall Guy. And spoiler alert, so it had Lee Majors in there at the end, and he made a cameo in there. I'm a big Lee Majors fan. I grew up with The $6 Million Man I still think Lee Majors is awesome. And I grew up with the unknown stuntman, and he was Colt Seavers. On John Campea, Robert Meyer Burnett said they should have just left off the Fall Guy title and Colt Seavers, and it could have been just take the element out of it, because no one under 30 even knows what that show was. And it was a fun show. I remember watching it. I enjoyed it, and but that's really where the comparisons to the Fall Guy film was. It was likable. It was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. Working in the industry, it was nice to see more of the behind the scenes stuff. I get that. It was great. And people in the industry will appreciate it more than the average person. But it really had nothing to do with it. So when you look at it that way, it's like, was it member berries? Is that what they call it? It's playing the nostalgia thing. And yeah, that can work to an extent, but it really didn't affect that film at all. If anything, I think it made it worse, So maybe they should have left, disassociated with that. But I don't know if you caught in the Fall Guy, they even had the bionic sound. So if I walked out of that theater and there was no cameo by Lee Majors, I would have been upset. And that would have been on me, because that was a personal thing there. But still, I'm still a little upset about. I would have been upset, but I wasn't. I enjoyed the film, but just could have been better. Could have been better. So, and the box office, that leading the summer box office off, was a big dud. That film's losing money. It's like $28 million. That's not good. It's not good. So that's the state of Hollywood where we're at. And it's going to take a lot more from people. It's going to just take a lot more of just people pushing it and getting everything up to the next level to be better, because we're just not doing it. And, the numbers we're doing better than we, pandemic numbers, but it's still less. And, 2019 it's like the movie industry fell off a cliff and forgot how to even watch a movie. It was just really weird. I mean, not watch a movie and forgot how to make good films. It's just really strange. So I just don't understand that. I really don't. But that's the thing about it. So it's about really watching a film. It's about making good films. It starts with the writing. So this has become the writing episode, a plea for good writing. And X-Men 97 has been the example of that. So, my gosh, recapping the season 1 of X-Men 97, it has been everything. We see Cyclops. Oh my God, the first episode. Still one of my favorites as well. It's hard to not have favorites among favorites, because it's such a great series. And a year from now or 2 years from now, whenever we've got season 2 in the can or watched it or whatever, I hope I'm as excited. I hope I'm even more excited, in fact, to see it, to be talking about it, and to be as excited about it. I hope I haven't been let down at this point and just so disillusioned and disappointed. That's certainly not my intention. So I'm hoping that they'll get it right, and I'm assuming, since everything is under Beau DeMaio, that it's still, through season 2, it was pretty much in the can, so other than anything they may have changed in it, I think we're maybe guaranteed at least another great season. And then season 3, we'll have a new head writer or whatever for that, so we'll see what that ends up being, and they've got plenty of time to work on that, so, I hope we get more than 10 episodes, but if that means the quality goes down, then give me 10 episodes. You give me 10 solid episodes, I won't complain. We've been burnt so many times in the fandom that we just want good stuff, and, We don't want the other shoe to drop. We don't want the woke shoe to come ruin things. We don't want any of that. We're not trying to get any of that. We just want, as fans, the best well-written pieces of material that you can give us that are true to the characters and their story arcs. And you can take us in new directions, but, stay true to the character. Make sure it's those characters that are taking us and not a character only in name, like the Fall Guy, only in name. You know what I mean? So, that's about all I have. I mean, I'm going on a little bit of hour of this, and I really was going to talk more, and had Digital Caveman been able to join me like originally planned, we might have been able to bounce off a lot of stuff, but I'm able to give him probably more of my opinions as well on this, and so I don't feel less of an episode. I think you got a really good episode out of me, and that's what I always want to give is my best that I can. And hopefully we'll have Caveman back soon. I'd like to have Scott back on whenever his busy work schedule can allow, and between me and college in the fall, I'll be going into my second and final year of that, and so it's a fun time. I'm studying to be a graphic designer. I'm supposed to say I am a graphic designer. I am a graphic designer. So it's an adventurous time. It's a very busy time. It can be mentally, physically draining, but I'm increasing my skills and improving myself. And that's what I think you ought to do in life is, you get better. And we learn, we grow, we evolve, we change. And can my characters change in the media that I consume? Of course they can. But if you're telling a story about it, make sure you're telling the story the way it should be told and not on some crazy tangent that makes no sense. So anyway, that's about it. Thank you for the people that popped in. I think I saw 2 or 3 people in the stream here. Nobody ever seems to comment. It's rare that they do, but thank you for everybody who showed up, even if for part of this or you're watching this on the replay. I ask that you subscribe to Geek Homeworld at youtube.com/@geekhomeworld4248. That's on YouTube at youtube.com/@geekhomeworld4248. Please hit that subscribe button. We've, at the recording of this May 18th, 2024, we're at 59 subs. And so we've, in the last 28 days, we've gained about 6 subs. And so welcome everybody to the channel. And we've got, this is a 176th episode. We've got some gaming videos I've recently uploaded. I need to do another one and upload it. I don't know that I'll get to it this week, but maybe in the coming week or so I'll be able to have some time to get a new video uploaded. But we've had some modest success there. Actually, one of them did about 100 and something views on it, and they're just I'm trying to keep them at 30-minute gaming sessions. They're Command and Conquer General's 0-hour skirmish plays and all. It's something I love to do. It's my favorite video game. And so I may do some other games when I can figure out how I'm going to do them and all that. And anyway, so thank you for everybody who's been liking that. And it's in the playlist on YouTube on Geek Homeworld under Geek Homeworld Gaming. So just look for the playlist. You'll see the live ones there. You'll see the audio versions, the podcast. We should have a tab there for Geek Homeworld Livestream audio, which is just a static image and the audio. If you're doing something, you might just want to listen to this like a podcast that way. The video, of course, is under the Geek Homeworld Livestream playlist on Geek Homeworld. Also, wherever you get your podcast, you'll hear this and other episodes. This is episode 176. So last week was our 175th episode. But anywhere you get your podcast, Pocket Cast is my favorite go-to player that I use now, since Google Podcast, which was my favorite, is no longer. But we're on iTunes or whatever it's called. I don't ever go on there, but the podcast goes there. Just because I'm mainly a Android person, so not so much an Apple person. So anyway, so I'm rambling on. So anyway, just check us out on all our social feeds there. Subscribe, please. Like, share this video, ding that bell, enable notifications when you subscribe to the channel here, and please tell your friends about us. Leave comments there. We're also on Twitter or X at Geek Homeworld. You can reach me there. I'm Savage Tech Man on there as well, so that's my other X account or Twitter account. We're on Instagram, but I don't really use Instagram that much. I'm not big on my social media like I ought to be. Just not had the time. I've been too busy. I'm just trying to get the content out there and say what I want to say about these wonderful content that, like X-Men 97 has been. I know I've devoted almost every of one of my episodes lately to X-Men 97. It's kind of what I've been wanting to do, and I really want to build a bigger community here on the channel. They say you're supposed to have a call to action. Of course, I've already asked you to subscribe, like, share, and do all that. So many people are like, oh yeah, I need to subscribe to your channel. I watch, but I don't subscribe. There's a lot of people that aren't subscribed. It would be great if you subscribed. It would help me as a creator. I don't really care about the stats as much, but to live in this world of YouTube, you have to kind of do that. I just want you to enjoy the content here and let me know about it. This is something that baffles me is a lot of people listen but don't comment. And I've got some recent followers and people that have commented or haven't commented, but I know that they're following out there and they're listening, so I welcome you to listen. But if I don't get your feedback, I don't know how I can make this show better, or other than I'm going to do what I'm going to do regardless and say what I feel. But, it's nice to get your feedback, and if you like something or if you appreciate what we're doing here, that's fine. If you want to support us in some way, that's fine too. I haven't set up a Patreon. I've been toying with that idea, but I don't know how many people would actually give to it because I got to see what my engagement here is. And the thing is, having people watching your content, but then not commenting and you don't know who they are. I wish YouTube would give creators like myself a little more transparency so we could see who is like in our streams, And if you want that anonymity, that's fine too. I get that. But it's, from a creator standpoint, it's always good to get feedback, especially positive, constructive feedback. So we know how to improve things in it, or we can maybe cover things within what we cover here on the podcast, and all that. We got JoeCon coming up here in Augusta, and Digital Caveman is going to be coming up for that. And me and him are going to go check that out, and we'll probably podcast around that time or have something of that. So he may be you may actually see him in the studio here. He may be my first studio guest. I don't know. We'll see how all that works out, but that's in June, so looking forward to that. That's about a month away. So that's what's coming up on the podcast. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap it up, and thank you for listening to this episode of Geek Homeworld. Please follow us, like all our social medias, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Thank you to Marvel for taking a chance on X-Men 97. Thank you to Bo DeMaio and your writing staff and everybody involved with X-Men 97 for bringing us 10 near perfect episodes. Wow. And thank you to the creators of X-Men the Animated Series. If it was not for your hard work and dedication all these years and keeping the fandom going with it and the interest, we wouldn't be here with X-Men 97. So all praise goes to you guys as well, all of you. Everyone, you guys and gals that have made it all possible, that laid the groundwork, and a lot of your stuff still holds up and is still the standard for a lot of fans like me that appreciate you out there. So thank y'all, everybody, and let's roll the outro here as we go And thank you for joining us here on episode 176, Livestream, X-Men 97 Season 1 Finale. I'm your host, Ed Ciucevich, and thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening to another exciting episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast with your host, Ed, aka the Savage Tech Man. Remember to follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for being a part of the Geek Homeworld.